Hello, my name is Ben Lister, and welcome to episode 9 of the Chatbox podcast. Today's guest will be Matt Hutchinson. I really hope you enjoy it. It's episode 9 of the Chatbox podcast here today. And yeah, loads more to come. So yeah, I really hope you listen out and enjoy. Be allowed. And I'll see you for the wrap up. This is the interview with Matt Hutchinson here on my YouTube channel.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Chatterbox podcast. How are you doing today? It's episode 9. Right, let's crack on. As you know, each week I have a guest to talk about their career or job, so let's crack on with this week's guest. It's broadcasting legend Matt Hutchinson. Hello, Matt. Welcome along.
Hi, Ben, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Pleasure as always. You've just come off the air, sir. I'm going to go easy today.
I'm ready.
Let's go. Question 1. Where did you start your broadcast career?
Well, I started broadcasting on hospital radio. That was 20 years ago this year. A friend of mine at college at the time was doing hospital radio, and I had an interest in kind of radio, listening to the radio, and kind of wanted to find out more about what it was about. And she said, "Oh, come along, come and join me and see what it's about." And the rest is history, really. I joined the hospital radio station. So that's how it all started. You know, got my experience collecting requests on the wards and presenting programs. And then eventually, after a few years, I sort of went to university in between as well. I recorded a demo tape and I sent it to my local radio station, Links FM. I was living in Lincolnshire. That's where I'm from originally. And I got a call and they said, come and see us. And I was very lucky to get a program on a Saturday night, which was the most exciting time of the week for me. I was working during the week, then I got to do the radio at the weekend, Saturday night between 10 and 1. And I did what was called Essential Nightlife, which was like a party show. And that was my first radio show in commercial radio, which actually was 15 years ago today. I realized when I was looking at Facebook, and it pops up with your memories from what you've done on this day years ago. So 15 years ago, 8th of April, 2006 was my first show. Extremely nervous, as you always are when you take on something new like that, but loved every minute of it. And then eventually I got a full-time job working at Compass FM in Grimsby, which is now Greatest Hits Radio, and spent many years there, still doing stuff on Links. And then I eventually came to Hull around about 10 years ago, and I've been broadcasting in this area for over 10 years now on Greatest Hits Radio, like you said, doing the afternoon show between 1 and 4 o'clock. And I present various other shows across the country for Nation Broadcasting in the Northeast and in Wales as well. So it's a real privilege. I love going on the radio every day. But that's where it all started, kind of, 15 years ago in commercial radio and 20 years ago on hospital radio.
Wow. Yeah, that's brilliant start to your career.
It was.
Question 2.
Sorry, yeah, it was. I absolutely loved it, and I still love it to this day. And like I said, I feel very privileged to still be on the radio every day.
Yeah, you look at different stations, and they've gone networked, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're still, we are still in Hull, Greatest Hits Radio. I'm still doing a local show every day, and we have local news and travel. So there's all that local information. Obviously now alongside, presenters that people know and love, people like Simon Mayo, who's doing Drive Time, who's recently joined the station, Mark Goodyear, and then the weekend, people like Paul Gavaccini and Pat Sharp and Janice Long, who've got a wealth of experience in radio and in music. And, people, like I said, presenters people love at the weekend. So it's great to hear them too.
Yeah, and it's also good that there's different variety as well.
There is. I mean, on Greatest Hits Radio, we play what we say on air, the biggest songs of the 70s, 80s and 90s. So you know what you're going to get. We're playing those big classic songs that everybody knows and everybody sings along to.
Yeah, and that's brilliant as well. Question 2. Who were your inspirations in broadcasting growing up?
Well, for me, Chris Moyles was, I think, the first presenter who I intently listened to on the radio. I remember growing up and my mum was listening to Radio 1 when I was young, and then Links FM came along in the early 90s as our local kind of commercial station. But I probably started listening to radio around about I was about 15, 16. That's when I really took an interest. I always loved music. And Chris Moyles was on at 4 o'clock on Radio 1 in the afternoon. So I kind of get home from school or college, listen to Chris Moyles, and that was kind of an everyday thing. So I grew up listening to him. He was my favorite presenter at the time. Other presenters on Radio 1, people like Mark and Lard in the day, Joe Wiley, obviously now on Radio 2, but was on Radio 1 in those days, was another favorite. So Radio 1, Chris Moyles was the person who I loved listening to. I started listening to Radio 2 a bit more after that, and people like Steve Wright, broadcasting legend, has always been a favorite. Ken Bruce, obviously. And I remember when I was at university, I'm a bit of a night owl, so I'd always be up quite late writing essays or whatever, listening to Janice Long, who was another one, kind of favorite presenter of mine. She used to be on kind of around about midnight on Radio 2. She's now on Greatest Hits Radio at the weekend. So those are the kind of people who I grew up listening to. But Chris Moyles was the first kind of presenter, I think, who I used to kind of listen to intently on the radio. I just loved his style. He was very in touch with the audience. Obviously, Moyles has gone on to Radio X now. Yeah. I think Greg James actually is another really good broadcaster who I occasionally dip in and out of as well on Radio 1 these days.
Yeah, and also one of my favourites, the first ever voice I heard on radio was back in 2007 at BBC Radio Humberside, a bloke called Carl Wheatley.
Yeah, Carl. Well, I mean, I sort of know Carl from sort of social media and sort of being in the radio industry. But yeah, Carl and Gloria, of course, I think they came back to Radio Humberside, didn't they, recently for their anniversary? Were a very popular duo when they were on the radio back in the day.
Yeah, and there was a lovely quiz which I took part in, and a few colleagues of mine took part in as well.
Was that to celebrate the anniversary?
Yeah, it was hosted no less by Andy Comfort.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on the day of the celebrations. Yeah, brilliant.
And it was organised by a person who you may know, you may not know, James Pykos.
Yeah, I do know James. I met James a few times, mostly kind of at the theatre. I think I've seen James, and he's a really nice guy. Obviously, he's worked on this or in this particular neck of the woods, on an East Yorkshire former Viking as well, isn't he?
Yeah, because he used to work at Viking, then produce the Peter Levy show, and then do a bit of cover, and then he had the breakfast show for a bit.
That's right, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Question 3. One of my favourite broadcasters of all time is the legendary Tony Blackburn, who you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean Tony is a great guy. Obviously, the first presenter on Radio 1 back in '67. He many people may remember he presented a Friday program for us on KCFM many years ago, and I had the pleasure of meeting Tony. He would actually do the show from London. He'd do it down the line, but occasionally he would come to Hull. He would do the program from the studios on Headon Road in those days. So it was a pleasure to meet Tony, who I'd listened to on the radio, and we got pictures with him. Great guy, who is, like you say, is an absolute radio legend and still broadcasting today and still sounding great.
Yeah, I remember that old KCFM building.
Yeah, so do I. I worked there. We were in that building for many years on Headon Road before we moved to our new studios in Hessel. Yeah, we had some fun times there. Yeah,
it was a good studio setup. I remember Paul Woodford doing a last goodbye on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, I remember that video. Paul was very good at doing videos and all that kind of stuff. And I remember him posting that video. Yeah, It was
Yeah.
good fun. It was good fun.
Question 3: what is your favourite part about the job?
Well, being on the radio is a privilege and an honour to be on the radio. You know, I love going on the radio. I love doing my radio shows. You know, I'm on the radio every day of the week across various stations, and still get that buzz all these years on. You know, it's a fun. It's great to connect with the listener. And I think especially over the last year with the pandemic, you know, radio has still proved its popularity. You know, being a friend, providing music, but local radio is so important at connecting with communities and just getting those local voices on and getting that local information out is so important. The other side of the job that I do that I really enjoy is kind of producing. So I present my programs, I produce my own programs, but I've always done stuff behind the scenes. So whether that be scheduling music or you know, editing audio, production, you know, events, you know, when we can do that kind of thing, obviously not during these COVID times, but we'd go out and about, we would host events. Christmas lights have always been one of my favorites. Obviously, I met you, Ben, at North Point Shopping Centre lights a couple of years ago when we were there. And we always get a good crowd and a good response. And it's great fun doing those things. And just going out and about and meeting listeners. And you know, when you're out and about, you're gathering audio with the people who listen to your radio station. And that's content that you can put on the radio. So I love doing that kind of thing as well. So kind of two sides to the job: being on the radio, great fun, love doing it, but then the kind of producing side of the radio as well, and producing content for other radio stations, which I do for the Nation Broadcasting Group, which has just launched a Nation 70s, Nation 80s, and Nation 90s, 3 radio stations dedicated to those 3 decades of music, and working with some of the presenters on Nation Radio UK, Dr. Fox, Neil Fox, who, Ben, I know you've spoken to recently. People like Russ Williams and Mike Reed are part of that station as well. So I used to listen to Dr. Fox back in the day on the Pepsi chart, which was the kind of commercial network chart show. So it's great to work with those guys as well.
Yeah, it was a rival to JK and Joel on Radio 1.
It was, yeah. Obviously, Radio 1 were doing the kind of BBC chart show, the official chart show, and obviously, yeah, the network, or Pepsi chart as it used to be called, was kind of on the commercial radio stations, and those charts still exist across various stations on a Sunday afternoon today.
Same music but different style.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a variation. Obviously, Radio 1 do their chart on a Friday now, and commercial radio tends to still do the chart on a Sunday, where I guess it kind of traditionally sat. I remember, as many people will, you know, when I was a kid, taping songs on a Sunday afternoon with a cassette on the chart, trying to stop it before the presenter started speaking. That was the fun bit, if you could do that. Obviously, kids don't do that today. It's all a bit different. They're streaming music, but that's what we used to do when we were listening to the chart kind of 20, 30 years ago.
Question 3. What is your favourite part about the job?
Oh, we've just done that one. Are we on to question 4?
Yeah, we are. Sorry. How has COVID affected your life and line of work?
Well, like for a lot of people, working from home has been the big thing, not just for me, but for so many people in so many different industries. And the radio industry is no different. You know, we have adapted to working from home over the last 12 months. And it just proves that you can do it. You know, radio stations up and down the country have sent presenters home with kit, and you can still do either a live or a pre-recorded radio show from your house via the internet. So the technology is so clever. And I'm sitting talking to you today via my kind of broadcasting equipment. So I've got a laptop, and I've got a mixer, and I've got a microphone, and I've got some soundproofing. And to the listener, you wouldn't know that I was at home unless I said so. There is very little difference to broadcasting in a radio studio to broadcasting in your bedroom. And it took a little bit of adapting, like everybody. Working from home was all very new to start with. I'm still doing it, and a kind of a year down the line, I've kind of got used to it. And I remember when I started, I was working on a very tiny, small little desk in a bedroom. And then over the kind of year, I bought a bigger desk and got more equipment just to make it sound a bit more soundproof and that kind of thing. And it just proves that you can do it. You can do radio from anywhere. And I think the last year has proved that you can do the same job in your house, in your bedroom, or wherever. People have set up radio studios in all sorts of places, in their houses, under the stairs, in lofts, in bedrooms, and whatever. And you can still do the same job in your house as you were in the radio studio. So that's been the biggest change for me, broadcasting at home. I enjoy it. And I've kind of got used to doing it from home now. And it's very clever that we've got the technology to be able to do that and just make that end product that the listener is hearing sound the same as if you're in the studio.
When you get back to the normal studio, will it be the old Radio Air building in Leeds?
Well, no, you see, it's a little bit different. I'm on Grace Estates Radio in Hull and East Yorkshire. So that is separate I do a separate program to what is broadcast in Yorkshire. So Bauer has a separate afternoon show that is broadcast for Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. And because the Grace Estates Radio license in Hull is owned by Nation Broadcasting, I do a separate local program for Hull and East Yorkshire. So I will continue to broadcast from this area. And Bauer's show for Yorkshire and Lincolnshire obviously still comes from Leeds.
Fair. The Grimsby one, does the Grimsby one come from Leeds as well?
I believe so, yeah. I think the Bauer regional show for Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, yeah, is for the, yes, it comes from Leeds for the whole of Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, covers Grimsby and Lincolnshire on DAB, I believe, as well.
Yeah, it's all confusing to me because there's so many Bauer networks now that
there is. It's getting bigger, isn't it? It's not getting smaller, it's getting bigger.
Yeah, and community radio is the way forward.
Yeah, community radio does a fantastic job at serving its audiences, and I'm very proud to still be a part of local radio in this area. On my show, championing Hull and East Yorkshire and talking about the things that people are talking about on the street, or in their houses maybe at the moment. Whether it's Hull City or whether it's the new bridge over the A63, we'll be talking about all those kind of big things that people are talking about locally. Yeah,
and also it's good when you also be able to get back in a proper studio, how you say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've adapted to working from home, and I don't mind working from home. Obviously, during the pandemic, it was the safest thing to do. And like I said, the great thing is having that technology that allows us to be able to do it and for it to sound no different to whether you are at home or in a kind of broadcast studio, in a traditional broadcasting environment.
Yeah, brilliant. Question 5, last question on the list. What advice would you give to young aspiring broadcasters who are starting out?
Well, I would say experience. Experience is the big thing that you need if you want to get into the radio industry. I went to university and I got a degree in media, which is great. And the experience of being at uni was brilliant. And it's something else to have on your CV. But actually, if you want to kind of get hands-on, being a presenter, a producer, experience is the way forward. If you want to be a journalist, obviously, which is another route into radio, then having a journalism degree is also very beneficial. But in terms of getting into the radio industry, if you are interested in presentation, getting that experience, which is what I did at hospital radio, and I was a volunteer at our hospital radio station in Lincolnshire for 18 years until it sadly closed a couple of years ago. So whether it be hospital radio or if you are at university student radio, community radio, just getting your foot in the door and getting that experience. I remember, like I said, doing hospital radio, collecting those requests from the patients for the request show, and then putting the show together and presenting it on the hospital radio station was just brilliant. That's how I started. That's how I kind of learnt my craft of presenting, and then eventually, putting together a demo tape. Well, it was a tape. It'll probably be an MP3 nowadays, and sending that to radio stations. If you want to be a producer, trying to get your foot in the door. You just never know if they might need somebody to help out. Experience is the key thing, and you just never know what it might lead to. That's how I got into the industry. Getting that hospital radio experience, recording a demo, sending it off. And I was lucky enough, you will get rejections. Everybody gets that. I got them. You'll get letters back saying, we don't need anybody. There aren't any vacancies. But just that one time, you might get a call from somebody saying, yeah, we do need, somebody to come and volunteer and help, or whatever. It might be paid work. But experience is the big thing I would recommend if you, are an aspiring broadcaster or producer. That really will be very beneficial.
Yeah, wow. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining us, Matt.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Do join me again soon for another podcast, but for now, please give it up for special guest Matt Hutchinson. Thank you very much for listening, and that's
that was my interview with KCFM's and Nation Radio's very own Matt Hutchinson. I really hope you enjoyed it. Do join me again for another podcast where my next guest on this series will be the legendary From Radio Air and Magic 828. It's Glenn Pinder, so join me then. I'll try and upload very soon, but for now, that's a wrap.